All right, she told herself, so I've killed him. It was extraordinary now, how clear her mind became of all of a sudden. She began thinking very fast. As the wife of a police officer, she knew what the punishment would be. It made no difference to her. She wouldn't mind dying. In fact, it would be a relief. On the other hand, what about the baby? What were the laws about murderers with unborn children? Did they kill them both, mother and child? Did they wait until the baby was born? What did they do? Mary Maloney didn't know, and she wasn't prepared to take a chance. She had to come up with a plan to save herself and her unborn child. Stop and jot right now. What is the conflict that our main character, Mary, is facing? Write that down. She carried the piece of raw lamb into the kitchen, put it into a pan, turned on the oven, and put the pan inside. Then she ran downstairs, took her coat, and went out the back door, through the garden into the street. It wasn't 6 o'clock yet, and the lights were still on in the neighborhood grocery. Hello, Sam, she said brightly, smiling at the man behind the counter. Good evening, Mrs. Maloney. How are you? I want some potatoes, please, Sam. Yes, and perhaps a can of beans, too. Patrick's decided he's tired and he doesn't want to eat out tonight, she told him. We usually go out on Thursdays, and now I don't have any vegetables in the house. The grocer turned his head to one side, looking at her. How about dessert? What do you want to give him for dessert? How about a nice piece of cake? I know he likes cake. Perfect, she said. He loves it. And when she had bought and paid for everything, she gave her brightest smile and said, Thank you, Sam. Good night. And now she told herself as she hurried back home, she was returning to her husband and he was waiting for his supper. She had to cook it well and make it taste as good as possible because the poor man was tired. And if she found anything unusual or terrible when she got home, then it would be a shock and she would have to react with grief and horror. Of course, she was not expecting to find anything unusual at home. Do everything normally, keep things absolutely natural, and there will be no need for acting at all. Mary Maloney thought that if she started acting like she was innocent, even in her own head, and even when she was alone, that the police would be more likely to believe her too. She had to own this and even convince herself she was innocent, rather than trying to nervously be an actress. So stop and jot. So far, how is Mary trying to solve her conflict in the rising action? Unpause when you're done. So make sure that whatever you have for this stop and jot, it has something about how what she's trying to do is pretend like nothing happened. She's trying to act as normally as possible. Goes to the grocery store, is even in her own head saying, wow, if I get home and see anything strange, that'll be new news to me. I did not do this. As she entered the kitchen in the back door, she said, Patrick, are you home from work yet? I was just out at the grocery. She went into the living room, and when she saw him lying there on the floor, the old love for him came back to her. And she ran over to him, knelt down beside him, and began to cry. A few minutes later, she got up and went to the phone. She knew the number of the police station, and when the man at the other end answered, she cried to him, Quick, come quickly, Patrick's dead. The car came very quickly, and when she opened the front door, 2 policemen walked in. She knew them both because Patrick has worked with them for years. She fell into Jack Noonan's arms, crying uncontrollably. She said that she had been to the grocer, and when she returned, he was lying here dead. After an hour or so of investigation and detectives on the scene, Noonan broke the news to Mary Maloney that her husband had been murdered by a blow to the head. Stop and jot. So now as you stop and think, now as we continue to read, try and think of the moment where the resolution starts. So right now we're still in our falling action. Remember, resolution is when we see that the conflict has been solved, and Mary's conflict is that she's trying to figure out how to cover up her husband's murder. So she just called the police. Let's see. They then told her that they were looking for the weapon. The murderer might have taken it with him, or he might have thrown it away or hidden it. It goes the same way every time, he said. Find the weapon, and you'll find the murderer. Remember, the weapon was that piece of lamb she just put in the oven before she left for the grocery store. Later, one of the detectives sat down beside her. Did she know, he asked, of anything in the house that could have been used as a weapon? Of course, Mary Maloney had no idea what it could have been. Look, Mrs. Maloney, did you know that your oven is still on? It seems as though you're cooking something. Oh, she said, so it is. I'd better turn it off. She returned with tearful eyes. Would you do me a favor? Here you all are, all good friends of Patrick's, and you're helping to catch the man who killed him. You must be very hungry by now because it's long past your supper time, and I know that Patrick would never forgive me if I let you stay in the house without offering you anything to eat. Why don't you eat up the lamb in the oven? I wouldn't dream of it, Noonan said. Please. She begged. Personally, I couldn't eat a thing, but it'd be a favor to me if you ate it up. I'm just not ready to be alone, and I'm scared in this big old house after such a tragedy. Please, just stay for a meal. Then you can go on with your work. The detectives hesitated, but they were hungry, and in the end they went to the kitchen and helped themselves to supper. The woman stayed where she was and listened to them through the open door. She could hear them speaking among themselves, and their voices were thick because their mouths were full of meat. Have some more, Charlie. No, we'd better not finish it. She wants us to finish it. She said we ought to eat it up. So the men continued on to completely finish that piece of lamb. That's a big bar the murderer must have used to hit poor Patrick. The doctor says the back of his head was broken to pieces, Noonan said with a mouthful of lamb. That's why the weapon should be easy to find. Exactly what I say, the detective replied. Whoever did it, he can't carry a weapon that big around with him. Personally, I think the weapon is somewhere near the house. It's probably right under our noses. What do you think, Jack? And in the other room, Mary Maloney began to laugh. Okay, so post-reading question number 1. Roald Dahl could have jumped right from the climax to saying, Mary called the police, then fed them lamb for dinner. Why was it so important in this story to have a strong falling action where we got slowly led to the resolution? And number 2, how do we know that paragraph 23 is where the resolution starts? So go to paragraph 23 and remember that the resolution is when we actually see the conflict solved. How do we know that this is where we actually start to see our resolution? Awesome. So now that you're done, go ahead and take out your Sumer narrative you've been working on, add your falling action, and then your resolution. Remember, don't just skip to a resolution where we see that everything's done. I really want you to slowly lead me there. Make sure that this is as strong as you can because your homework is going to be this final draft, not the homework in the packet, because tomorrow we're going to have an awesome publishing party during class.